3 seconds of absolute silence. Black screen. Tension music growing. Low volume. There is a second signal, a signal that always appears before every major financial collapse in history. It's not in the newspaper headlines. It's not in the charts you see on television. It's not in the optimistic speeches of experts. It's not in the technical analyses of economists. It doesn't shout, doesn't announce, doesn't warn with clarity. But when it emerges, something invisible changes in the air. It's as if millions of people, without knowing each other, without communicating, began to breathe differently. As if the entire system entered standby mode. As if everyone, deep down, knew that something is profoundly wrong, but no one had the courage to admit it out loud. This signal doesn't cause panic. It prepares panic. It doesn't destroy the economy. It prepares the ground for destruction. And now, at this exact moment, while you're living your life normally, this second signal has returned. Between silent decisions that companies are making, between invisible movements that investors are making, between subtle behaviors that you're seeing every day but not connecting, this second signal is already active, already operating, already spreading. If you understand what it means, if you comprehend how it works, you will understand exactly where we are in the historical cycle. Because history doesn't repeat by accident. It repeats because no one remembers the signals. It repeats because no one pays attention to patterns. It repeats because people only wake up when it's too late. And when you finish watching this video, you will never look at the world the same way again. Because what you're about to discover isn't in any news broadcast, isn't in any popular book, isn't in any conventional analysis. Stay with me until the end. What you're going to learn here isn't comfortable, isn't reassuring, isn't optimistic, but it's the truth no one is telling you. Let's start from the beginning. To understand the second signal, you first need to understand how economic collapses really happen. Most people believe that financial crises emerge suddenly. One day everything is fine. The next day everything crumbles. But that's an illusion. The truth is that every economic collapse happens in phases. And these phases follow a pattern so precise, so consistent, that you can identify them decades before they happen. There are 3 main signals that precede every major crisis. First signal happens at the top of the pyramid, in closed rooms, in decisions the public never sees, in the silent actions of central banks, large institutions, those who really control the system. This first signal is about power. It's about who knows what's coming. It's about invisible preparation. Second signal. This is born in the middle of the pyramid, among ordinary people, among entrepreneurs, investors, consumers. It's not a specific action. It's a collective sensation. A discomfort that starts small. A hesitation that spreads slowly, silently. A primitive instinct that whispers in the back of the mind, something isn't right here. Third signal? This is the most dangerous of all. It's the signal that transforms possibility into inevitability. It's the moment when there's no turning back. But we'll talk about that in the next video. Now, let's focus on the second signal, because that's the one that's active right now. Before the Great Depression of 1929, the world was experiencing unprecedented prosperity. The 1920s were called the Roaring Twenties. The American economy was growing. The stock market was breaking records. Everyone was optimistic. Everyone was making money. But in 1928, a full year before the collapse, something began to change. Not in the official numbers, not in the headlines, not in politicians' speeches, but in the emotional climate. Businessmen began to postpone investments without clear explanation. Investors began to comment among themselves. It seems strange, I can't explain it, but something seems strange. Consumers began to save a little more money just as a precaution. No one was shouting, no one was running, no one was selling everything and fleeing. But everyone felt this diffuse sensation, this collective discomfort, this silent hesitation. This is the second signal. And it's not caused by a specific event. It's caused by the accumulation of microsignals that the human brain detects, but the conscious mind doesn't fully process. Our brain is a pattern detection machine. It processes thousands of pieces of information per second. And when something in the environment starts to go wrong, even subtly, the body reacts before the mind understands. That's why you can enter a place and feel that something is strange without being able to explain why. That's why you can look at someone and feel the person is lying, even without concrete evidence. And that's why millions of people can start to feel that the economy is fragile, even when all the official numbers say everything is fine. The second signal isn't rational. It's emotional, and that's exactly why it's so powerful and so dangerous. Because when collective emotion changes, collective behavior changes. And when collective behavior changes, the economy collapses. Now you understand what the second signal is. But how does it appear in the real world? How can you identify it? What are the specific signs that reveal its presence? The second signal doesn't arrive like an explosion. It doesn't announce its arrival. It infiltrates. It appears in small behaviors, in micro decisions, in subtle changes that alone mean nothing. But together they form an unmistakable pattern. I'm going to show you exactly how this happens. Micro signal number 1. Companies cutting. Silently. One company announces it's restructuring for efficiency. Another cancels an expansion project for strategic reasons. Another postpones hiring but doesn't announce it publicly. Individually, each decision makes sense. But when dozens, hundreds, thousands of companies start doing this at the same time, this isn't coincidence. It's the second signal operating. Micro signal number 2. Investors in waiting mode. An investor decides to wait one more month before making that acquisition. Another comments with colleagues, "I'm going to hold some liquidity, just as a precaution." Another reduces stock exposure but keeps this discreet. There's no panic, no massive selling, just hesitation. And hesitation is the first step of the fall. Micro signal number 3. Consumers holding back. Spending. A family postpones replacing their car. One more year doesn't make a difference. Another cancels planned vacation. "We'll save a little more this year." Another reduces superfluous purchases, just the essentials for now. No one is in despair. No one is starving. But everyone is saving a little more. Everyone is retaining a little more. Everyone is waiting. Micro signal number 4. Conversations changing. Tone. Managers comment in meetings, "This quarter is different." Executives mention, "Clients are more cautious." Salespeople notice, "Negotiations are taking longer." They're not direct complaints. They're not alarms. They're just observations. Small comments that seem insignificant. But when millions of people start making the same comments, when the collective tone changes, the system has already entered the danger zone. Micro signal number 5. Numbers. 2 stable industrial orders fall 3%, then 5%, then 7%, but without alarming headlines, without sensationalist coverage. Retail sales stabilize. Hiring normalizes. Growth moderates. All these soft words, all these reassuring expressions are codes. They're polite ways of saying, things are slowing down, but we don't want to cause panic. Now, imagine all these micro signals happening at the same time. Companies cutting discreetly, investors hesitating, consumers saving, conversations changing tone, numbers stabilizing worryingly. Alone, each of these signals is just noise. But together they form the invisible fracture of the system. And when collective confidence breaks in silence, when millions of people begin to doubt at the same time without realizing they're doing this, when collective behavior changes in a coordinated but unconscious way, the collapse has already begun. It just hasn't become visible yet. There is a truth about economics that few truly understand. The economy is not destroyed by numbers. It's not destroyed by debt. It's not destroyed by policies. The economy is destroyed by emotions. Because in the end, the economy is not a mechanical system. It's a psychological system. It's made of human decisions, of human confidence, of human fear, of human hope. And when collective psychology changes, when the dominant feeling shifts from confidence to doubt, the entire system collapses. Let's go back to 1929. Before the collapse, the American economy was technically strong. Companies were profitable. Unemployment was low. Industrial production was high. The numbers were good. But in 1928, something began to change in the emotional climate. It wasn't panic. It wasn't despair. It wasn't explicit fear. It was something more subtle, more dangerous. The euphoria stopped rising. For years, the dominant feeling had been, the sky's the limit. We're going to get rich. But in 1928, this feeling changed to, well, maybe we should be a little more cautious. It wasn't pessimism, it was just the absence of extreme optimism. And this subtle change was the beginning of the end. Confidence began to crack. Investors who previously bought any stock started asking, is this really worth this price? Businessmen who previously expanded aggressively started thinking, maybe we should wait a bit. Consumers who previously spent freely started considering, do we really need this now? Security began to dissolve. That feeling of everything will be fine began to transform into what if things don't turn out fine? And this feeling, silent, diffuse, almost imperceptible, was the real trigger. Because the economy doesn't break when the numbers get bad. The economy breaks when people start to doubt. And doubt is contagious. One person doubting changes nothing. 10 people doubting changes nothing. 100 people doubting changes nothing. But when millions of people start doubting at the same time, the system enters its most fragile phase. The modern economy works based on confidence. Confidence that the bank will return your money. Confidence that your job will continue to exist. Confidence that your investments will maintain value. Confidence that the future will be, at minimum, as good as the present. And when this confidence starts to crack, even if nothing has changed objectively, even if the numbers are still technically good, collapse becomes inevitable. Because people start acting based on doubt. They start saving money instead of spending. They start selling assets instead of buying. They start reducing costs instead of expanding. And when millions of people do this simultaneously, the economy that was prosperous yesterday becomes stagnant today and collapses tomorrow. This pattern repeated in 1929. It repeated in 2008. It repeated in every major crisis in history. And it's repeating now. The psychological signals of 2025 and 2026 are practically identical to the signals of 1928. The euphoria stopped growing. Confidence began to crack. Hesitation began to spread. And the worst, most people don't notice. Because they're waiting for obvious signs. They're waiting for alarming headlines. They're waiting for visible panic. But the second signal doesn't work like that. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And when people finally hear the whisper, it's too late. There is a specific moment when the second signal stops being a warning and becomes a death sentence for the system. It's the moment when small individual hesitations transform into coordinated collective behavior. I'm going to explain exactly how this happens. Phase 1. Individual hesitation. At first, it's just individuals making cautious decisions. A businessman here postpones a hiring. An investor there reduces exposure. A family over there postpones a large purchase. These decisions are independent, not coordinated, not connected. The impact on the system is minimal. Phase 2. Emotional contagion. But then, something happens. People start to perceive that other people are also hesitating. A manager comments, "Our clients are more cautious." A salesperson observes, "Negotiations are taking longer." An analyst notes, "Transaction volume is falling." And when people realize they're not the only ones hesitating, the hesitation intensifies. Because now it's not just personal intuition. It's social validation. If other people are also worried, maybe my concern is justified. Phase 3. Normalization of caution. In this phase, being cautious becomes the norm. Companies start cutting costs openly. It's just prudent management. Investors start migrating to safe assets. It's just smart diversification. Consumers start saving more. It's just financial responsibility. Everyone has rational explanations for their behaviors. But the collective result is devastating. Because when everyone cuts spending simultaneously, everyone's revenue falls simultaneously. When everyone saves money simultaneously, the flow of money in the system slows simultaneously. When everyone becomes cautious simultaneously, growth stops simultaneously. Phase 4. The point of no return. And then we reach the critical point. The moment when collective behavior becomes self-fulfilling. People were worried the economy might slow down, so they started acting cautiously, which caused the economic slowdown, which validated their initial concerns, which increased caution even more, which accelerated the slowdown even more. It's a vicious cycle, a downward spiral, a negative feedback loop that feeds itself. And once this cycle begins, it's almost impossible to stop. Because at this point, even if good news emerges, people no longer believe. Confidence was broken. Doubt was installed. Fear was normalized. It was exactly like this in 1929. The hesitation began in 1928. It intensified in early 1929. It reached critical mass in September 1929. And it exploded in October 1929. It was exactly like this in 2008. The hesitation began in 2006 to 2007. It intensified in early 2008. It reached critical mass in September 2008, and it exploded with the collapse of Lehman Brothers. The pattern is identical. And now, in 2025 to 2026, we're seeing the same pattern repeat. The hesitation has already begun. Emotional contagion is already underway. Normalization of caution is already happening. The question is not if we'll reach the point of no return. The question is when. Now you might be wondering, if this pattern is so clear, why don't people see it? Why don't the masses wake up to what's happening? Why aren't experts warning? The answer lies in the nature of the second signal, because the second signal doesn't hurt. It doesn't cause immediate pain. It just makes the air heavy. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're on an airplane. The plane is flying smoothly. No turbulence. No alarm sounding. Everything seems normal. But without you noticing, the plane started losing altitude. Not dramatically, not in free fall, just gradually. 10 meters per minute, then 20, then 50. You don't feel anything because the change is slow. There's no moment of beginning the fall. There's no event that marks the transition. You just continue reading your magazine, looking out the window, talking with the passenger next to you. Everything seems normal. But if you looked at the altimeter, if you paid attention to the subtle signs, you would realize the plane is no longer climbing. It's no longer maintaining altitude. It's descending. And at some point, maybe in 20 minutes, maybe in 40, it's going to collide with the ground. This is exactly the situation of the global economy now. Life continues normally. Streets remain full, stores remain open, the market continues functioning. But something changed internally. People buy more cautiously. Companies talk with more concern. Numbers become stable, but for the wrong reasons. And because this change is gradual, because there's no dramatic moment of rupture, most people don't notice. They're waiting for obvious signs, waiting for screaming headlines, waiting for panic in the streets, waiting for visible collapse. But when these obvious signs finally appear, it's too late. Because at this point, the system has already entered the pre-panic phase. It's not the visible collapse yet, it's the emotional collapse. And every financial crisis begins in the silence of emotions, not in the noise of markets. There's still another reason why people don't notice. Normalization. When changes happen gradually, we adapt to them. At the beginning of 2020, wearing a mask seemed strange. 6 months later, it was normal. At the beginning of the 2000s, smartphones seemed like unnecessary luxury. Now they're essential. In the same way, companies cutting costs? It's just operational efficiency. Investors more cautious? It's just prudent risk management. Consumers spending less? It's just financial responsibility. All these behaviors are normalized. They're repackaged in positive terms. They're reinterpreted as rational choices. They're stripped of their real meaning. And so, the second signal operates in plain sight but remains invisible. In 1929, how many people saw the crisis coming? Less than 1%. In 2008, how many people sold their assets before the collapse? Less than 1%. Not because the signs weren't there. They were. But because 99% of people were looking in the wrong places. They were looking at headlines, at political speeches, at expert analyses. But they weren't looking at the emotional climate. They weren't feeling the subtle change in the air. They weren't connecting the micro-signals. And now, history is repeating. Now we arrive at the most critical part of this entire analysis. The moment when two worlds collide. The moment when destiny is sealed. Remember the first signal I mentioned at the beginning? The signal that happens at the top of the pyramid. In the silent decisions of central banks. In the invisible movements of large institutions. In actions the public never sees. This is the signal of power. It's when those who really control the system start preparing for what's coming. And the second signal? This happens in the middle of the pyramid. Among ordinary people. Among growing hesitation. Among collective doubt. This is the signal of emotion. It's when collective psychology starts to change. And when these two signals meet, a cycle closes. Because what you have is power preparing at the top and emotion deteriorating in the middle. And when these two forces converge, when the silent preparation of the top meets the growing doubt of the base, the system loses its support. Because at this point, those who have power know something is wrong and are protecting themselves. Those who don't have power feel something is wrong and are hesitating. And in the middle there's no more foundation, no more confidence, no more base for support. It's in this phase that history repeats its darkest chapters. 1929. First signal in 1927 to 1928. Central banks starting to tighten monetary conditions discreetly. Second signal in 1928 to 1929. Growing hesitation among investors and consumers. Meeting of signals, September 1929. Collapse, October 1929. 2008. First signal in 2006 to 2007. Financial institutions starting to liquidate problematic positions discreetly. Second signal in 2007 to 2008. Growing hesitation in credit and real estate markets. Meeting of signals, August to September 2008. Collapse, September to October 2008. Lehman Brothers. The pattern is exact. First, the top moves. Then, the middle reacts. When they meet, the system collapses. And now, 2025 to 2026, the first signal has already happened. Central banks already changed policies. Institutions already adjusted positions. Those who have power already moved. And the second signal? It's already underway. Hesitation has already settled, doubt has already spread, collective behavior has already changed, and now we're at the convergence point. We're at the moment when the two signals are meeting. We're exactly at the same point the world was in September 1929. Exactly at the same point it was in September 2008. The economy doesn't collapse with a single event. It collapses when the signals align, and they've already aligned. Let's stop talking about history. Let's stop talking about abstract patterns. Let's talk about what's happening now. At this exact moment, while you're watching this video, the second signal is not a future possibility. It's not a hypothetical scenario. It's already here. Already operating at full force. Let me show you the concrete evidence. Evidence number 1. Silent corporate cuts. In the last 12 to 18 months, thousands of companies around the world implemented optimizations, staff cuts described as strategic restructuring, project cancellations described as priority realignment, cost reductions described as efficiency improvement. Individually, each case has its justification. But when you see tens of thousands of companies doing this simultaneously in different sectors, in different countries, all using the same soft words, this isn't coincidence. It's unconscious coordination. It's the second signal operating. Evidence number 2. Migration to safety. In recent months, there's been a massive flow to assets considered safe. Gold reaching historical highs. Government bonds with record demand. Dollar strengthening against emerging currencies. Why? Because investors, institutional and individual, are feeling something isn't right. They can't point to the exact problem, they can't name the specific threat. But they're feeling. And when they feel, they act. And when millions act simultaneously, markets reveal the truth that words hide. Evidence number 3. Consumer contraction. Retail sales in multiple economies are stabilizing or moderating. Durable goods purchases are falling. Long-term financing is slowing. Personal savings are increasing. Official reports use technical and neutral language. But the simple reality is, people are spending less. They're saving more. They're hesitating. And as we've seen, collective hesitation is the harbinger of collapse. Evidence number 4. Change in corporate discourse. If you read the transcripts of company earnings calls, if you pay attention to the tone, not just the numbers, you'll notice something. The words have changed. Before, aggressive expansion, robust growth, unlimited opportunities. Now, prudent caution, disciplined management, challenging environment. The numbers may still be technically good. But the tone has changed, and tone reveals sentiment, and sentiment precedes action, and collective action determines reality. Evidence number 5. Silent government adjustments. Governments around the world are revising projections. Expected growth being adjusted downward, revenue forecasts being recalibrated, spending plans being reprioritized. None of these adjustments are presented as alarming. All are framed as responsible management or greater realism. But what's really happening? Governments are realizing their optimistic forecasts aren't materializing. They're realizing reality is deviating from expectations. They're silently preparing for harder times. Now, look at all this evidence together. Companies cutting, investors migrating, consumers hesitating, discourse changing, governments adjusting. All of this happening at the same time, in multiple countries, in multiple sectors, with identical patterns to 1929 and 2008. The second signal is already active. This is no longer a warning about what might happen. It's a description of what's already happening. So here we are, at the end of this journey through the signals that history sends before each collapse. And now you know that the second signal doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't explode. It takes a deep breath. It doesn't announce danger clearly. It creates climate. And you know how to recognize it now. You understand what it means when companies start cutting discreetly. You understand what it means when investors migrate to safety without alarm. You understand what it means when consumers hesitate without clear reason. You understand what it means when the world slows down in silence. You understand how emotional collapse always precedes financial collapse. You understand how collective doubt always precedes collective fall. You understand how the patterns of 1929 and 2008 are repeating now. And you understand we're living this exact moment, not as a distant possibility, not as theoretical speculation, but as present reality. Life continues. People work, eat, sleep, laugh. The sun rises and sets. But something has changed. Something invisible but fundamental. The second signal is active. The clock is running. The cycle is closing. And the question that remains is not, will this happen? The question is, when? And more importantly, will you be prepared? The future doesn't arrive without warnings. History always sends signals, but only to those who have the courage to look. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: 99% of people will never watch this video. And of those who watch, 99% will forget in a week. And of those who remember, 99% won't do anything different. Because it's more comfortable to believe everything is fine. Because it's easier to trust the experts who say not to worry. Because it's less scary to ignore the signals. But you? If you made it this far, if you watched this entire video, if you truly understood what was said, you're not like the 99%. You saw what most can't see. You understood what most refuse to understand. And now you have a choice. You can close this video and return to your normal life. Pretend you didn't see what you saw. Hope that somehow you're wrong. Or you can accept the reality of what's happening. You can prepare. You can be part of the 1% who survive what's coming. The choice is yours. But before you decide, there's something else you need to know. Because the second signal, as important as it is, isn't the last. There is a third signal, the most dangerous of all, the most ignored of all, and the one that really defines when collapse becomes absolutely inevitable. This third signal is what transforms a warning into destiny. It's what transforms possibility into certainty. It's what seals the end. And if you want to understand what this third signal is, if you want to know when it appears, if you want to be totally prepared for what's coming, you need to subscribe to this channel now. Because the next video in this series will reveal exactly that. It will show you the final signal, the signal no one is talking about. The signal that, when you see it, means there's no more time left. Don't let this knowledge pass. Because the difference between those who survive crises and those who are destroyed by them is simply this: those who survive saw the signals and acted. Subscribe now. The next chapter of this story, the final chapter of the cycle, is coming. And when it arrives, you'll want to be ready. The next 1929 episode 2, The Second Signal,